Ladies and gentlemen, today on the program, a second trip to Hollywood courtesy of actor, writer, and filmmaker Rakefet Abergel. Before we get to what is an absolutely inspiring episode, yes, I can confirm that I am back from the road, back from 6 weeks in Europe with Sarah Smith, and I am sitting in my chair in my little studio. And it is wonderful to be back. We had a really great time. I'm not going to give you all the details. If you want to know how the tour was, go to my website, john-huff.com. Click on Tour Blog, and you can find out for yourself. There's something close to 50,000 words of content there, I want to say. I blogged almost every day. I certainly blogged about every day. And you can read about the fun, the mundanities, the travel, the stress, all the stuff that goes into being an indie band on the road, doing a marathon tour, 34 shows in 6 weeks, in all kinds of places, from coffee shops to theaters, everything in between. It was an odyssey, it was fun, and between you and me, I can barely remember any of it, so I'll have to go check out the tour blog too to remember what on earth happened over that time span. What did not happen, at least after about the first week or so, is a traditional episode of this podcast. Because you can't really do interviews on the road. It's incredibly tough to make that happen. So we banged out the Yeti Bones episode, which was great. And we did a couple of road-episodes with Ken the Zen and Denny, and those were great. But now we're back to the business of doing this podcast and talking to cool people out there who you may not know, and Rakefet is one of them, but it's also kind of a neat connection between the tour and the podcast because Rakefet came to my awareness via Ken and Sarah. It's weird how this goes. Ken and Sarah were touring in the States. I'm not even sure when, but they were in, I presume, California. And Rakefet came randomly to a show, and they got to be friends. And so Ken in particular has remained in contact with her, and he suggested her to me as a podcast guest. And now that I've spoken to her, I'm glad that he did, because as I said, this is a super inspiring episode, and I don't want to give too much of it away, but I left the conversation feeling really inspired to do things and to try things. And what I've seen time and time again when I've interviewed creative people on this show, there are certain things that keep coming up over and over and over. And one of them is that creative people do things. And this goes all the way back to just doing it with Denny Goche. Actually, it goes back to the first episode, Phoenix Fire, and the risks that he takes and the initiative he showed to just start doing his thing. I've seen it over and over and over, and Rakefet is another example. She's an actor. She's been in LA her whole life, was always determined to become an actor. And when she was not getting the roles that she wanted or the types of roles that she wanted, she decided the thing to do was write the role herself and produce a film with her acting it. And so what happened was, through that process, Rakefet the actor became Rakefet the writer, the producer, the director, the filmmaker, and she's now done 2 short films, Jackson Love and her most recent one, Boo, and both of them have been huge, phenomenal successes. They've won multiple awards. She's won multiple Best Director awards. She's won acting awards. She's created these things out of nothing, and it's just been a really incredible journey, and she's going to tell us all about it, and I hope you'll be inspired by it the way I am. You've got to do things, folks. You know, you've got to start a podcast. You've got to write the film you want to be in. You've got to make the music. You've got to create the art. You've got to build the business. You've got to take the course. You've got to do things. And over and over and over again, the people who appear on this show remind me that without action, everything is useless. You can have all the ideas in the world, but the people who get anywhere are the people who execute on them. she's a great example. What she's doing is awesome. It's opened up doors for her to herself that she didn't realize existed. You know, she's had to make it up as she goes along, the way I've had to make up this show as it goes along. You know, not knowing what to do is not a valid excuse anymore, because you can find out, and through initiative and trial and error, you can get to the places you want to be. Rakefet reminded me of that. She also reminded me, as Tyler Olson reminded me a few episodes back, that it is not about fame. For working actors like her, like Tyler, it's about working. And I have to be reminded of that too. As a working drummer, it's about working. You know, becoming rich and famous, maybe that would be nice. Maybe it wouldn't if you listen to her talk. It's not about that. It's about doing the thing that you love to do. And, you know, in a perfect world, being able to make a living from it. Sometimes that means a long, hard grind. In Tyler's case, you know, Rakefet has had to branch out to make things happen. But in both cases, it's simply about doing the work and doing that thing you love for a living if you can make it happen. It's not about wealth. It's not about fame. And it's a good thing to be reminded of, because, you know, if those are your goals, you're probably not going to make it in whatever field you're choosing. You know, if you want to be an actor for the glory, you may not have the commitment to craft that will get you there. If you want to be a musician for fame and glory, well, that's possible, but it tends to come as a result of commitment to craft and commitment to grind and commitment to work. And people like Rakefet remind you that the joy is in producing the work. You know, it's not as much in the results. It's in the day-to-day loving and living that experience. So I want to thank Rakefet for reminding me of that. We all need that reminder once in a while, to focus on the things you love and do them for their own sake. And it's easy to get caught up in other stuff, but, you know, the people who get there are the people who are committed to that craft or that passion and developing and becoming better. And when necessary, producing their own work to make it happen. And I'm really inspired by that. So thank you, Rakefet Abergel, for that. I hope you will take as much from this episode as I did and continue to. And there's more coming. I'm getting the show back up off the ground again. It takes a bit of time, but I'm working at it. I want to thank you for hanging with me. If you got guests that you think I should talk to, by all means, send them my way. And well, let's get to it, shall we? Hey, Denny! Roll intro! Hello! You're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay! So, Rakefet Abergel, is that right?
That was pretty good.
Was it?
Yeah.
First lady of American horror films?
Oh, I think that's a bit much, but I'll take it.
You are on your way. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm just tired and I have to write and I don't want to because it's hard to get going.
What are you writing?
Yeah.
What are you writing?
I'm writing a feature. It's a ghost story, which I've never written about ghosts before. And I've never written a feature before. So it's kind of, there's been a lot of false starts. Let's put it that way. There's been a lot of taking my computer out, staring at it, going, yeah, no, and then shutting it, and then telling people I'm writing, but I'm not actually writing anything.
Are you a person who plots the whole thing out? Does all of the background work?
That's the smart way to do it.
This is not you?
No, I do it my own way, which is probably the wrong way. But my way, at least with shorts, this is how it's gone for me, is that I just start writing. Like, I have an idea, like a basic idea. This is a story I want to do. And then I literally just start writing, like interior, someone's house, blah, blah, blah. And I literally just start like writing. And then I write a really bad something. And then I go back and I start messing with it. And it kind of outlines itself eventually. So it's more like I kind of go with like stream of consciousness first, so to speak, like just writing whatever. And then when I realize, oh, this isn't working, or, oh, I didn't set this up, or, oh, this doesn't match this, or whatever, I fix it until I feel like it's at least palatable to show to somebody. And then I start getting notes, and then I get really crazy with the writing. But I bet if I outlined it, it would all go a lot faster. But I don't really know what I want to say. I don't really know my story until I start writing it. And I feel like I have to kind of live it, like through the writing.
This is the thing. A lot of people would say that plotting it out kills your creative impulse.
Sure.
But, okay, so I spent 10 years of my life trying real hard to be a novelist, okay?
Okay.
And with varying degrees of unsuccess. But I did manage to make it to the end a few times. And that was my process. I was a straight up start on page one and see what happens kind of writer.
Right.
I've also taken screenwriting courses, and they really come at you with plot that out, get everything together, get your 3-act structure together, and do all the things.
Right.
And it would feel weird to me, I think, to do a script stream of consciousness that way. But it sounds cool.
I guess like I mean, look, I've been reading scripts and or acting in, movies that have scripts, or watching movies and TV my whole life. So I think to some degree, most people, especially someone who's been working in the industry a long time, kind of know, you might not know what story structure is, but you feel it.
Right.
Like you can feel it. Like this is where this should happen. This is where that should happen. When I start opening screenwriting books or taking a class or talking to other screenwriters who are doing it maybe in the more correct fashion, it actually makes me not want to do it at all.
Really?
Because it suddenly feels like work, and it feels hard, and it feels scary, and it feels overwhelming. And actually that's been my whole problem with writing this feature, is that like with a short, I feel like there's so many ways you can do a short. You could have it just a piece of something. It could be a beginning, a middle, and an end, full story. So I feel like it's maybe easier to write the way that I write when it's a short. But when it's a feature, you think, oh, I need this 3 acts. I need this thing to happen on this page. And I need to make sure that by here, the whole character arc is complete. And then, and it confuses me. And I went to film school for this, but like it confuses me, and it makes me just not want to do it at all, because then I'm like, I'm not going to do it right. I'm a perfectionist. So I feel like, oh, if I'm not going to do it right, or if I'm not going to do it the way that it should be done, then I really shouldn't do it at all. And that's my own hang up. So when I just kind of write, then I have something, even if it's trash, for like other writers to read, and for them to go, yeah, this doesn't make sense, or yeah, this like should happen sooner, or yeah. And I really rely heavily on other people's notes, which, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do, it's just the way that I do things, and I never do anything the way that you're supposed to do them, like ever.
So far it's working for you, right?
I mean, yeah, the 2 shorts that I wrote exactly like that. I literally was like, for my first one for Jax, I wanted to make this movie for myself to perform, like to do a more dramatic character than I usually was getting cast in, which was mostly comedy prior to that. And so I was like, I had this like image of myself like in the desert, and it's very cinematic, and like, and she's a wanderer, and I don't know, for whatever reason, that's literally all I had to go on. And so I was just like, I'm going to put her in a car with someone in the desert and just see what their conversation turns into. And I literally just started writing this conversation between her and the girl who ended up being Sunny in my film. And then it just like expanded from there. So maybe because I'm an actor, Like, I just want to kind of like almost, I envision it the way how I would want to see it and how I would want to play it. And then I just.
Well, that's a good thing.
Right.
And this is a film. You need to be able to see it, right?
Right.
You need to be able to see this in your minds.
If things seem too hard to me, whatever it is in my life, anywhere, I literally just don't do it. I just don't do it. I'm like, if it seems too hard, I shut down. And so I have to make things that are hard for everybody kind of palatable to me. And so for me, I'm just like writing the story. And then if it's all trash, it's all trash. And if it isn't, great. And if I land on a few like gold mines, great. And then I just like shape it from there. But so far I don't have a feature. So
how far along are you on the feature at this point?
Well, I wrote it first as a short. So It was about a 19-page short.
Sure.
And it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. So in a way, that is the outline to some degree, because the short pretty much was the outline. The thing is that as a short, it didn't work. Like, I submitted it to a couple of festivals. Boo got into like everything. And this got into 1 out of 2 that I submitted it to.
Just the script.
Just the script.
Right.
And I didn't get the same response from it, just from people reading it, that I did from Boo. And I think because I was trying to create this character arc that was happening way too fast for a short.
Right.
Meaning like the turn just happens too fast. And there's no time to breathe and no time to like get to know all these characters. And so I decided that what I have to do is expand it instead of trying to like make it smaller.
That's exciting.
Making it smaller would make it something else.
That's exciting. Realizing that you've maybe got a feature length idea here, that's pretty cool.
It's definitely a feature length idea, and the more I force myself to just write even a page, I come up with all these other ideas.
Right.
And I think in the end, it will have the structure that it's supposed to have, just by nature of like, I know how stories go. Yeah. I've seen a bazillion films. I've read a bazillion books. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think most people who are readers or watchers of films and TV just have it. They can feel that structure inside them and not even know what it is. Like with sitcoms, for instance, like sitcoms have a very distinct structure with the A and B stories and whatever. And I think that people, they can feel it when it's not there, and they can feel it when it is there, and they may not be able to say this is what it is, but they know it. And so I just kind of feel it.
That's terrific. As somebody who's looked at this from the outside, okay, now I've read the books and I've taken screenwriting classes, and screenwriting was never my thing, but I have a friend who's an aspiring screenwriter, so I did this with him. Mm-hmm. And from somebody who's outside of Hollywood, and I'm pretty far outside of Hollywood, it intimidates you because you think that you've got to do the script this way, and it's got to be, right. You know what I mean? Like that's exactly, yeah. For people who are listening right now and aren't up on scripts, film scripts, there are plot points. There are things that if you break down a typical Hollywood script, you'll see certain things happen. And there's calculations and formulas for this, I guess. And they scare you into thinking if you don't do it this way, you have no chance, and you're up against a million scripts. But I like what you're saying. There's a lot of things that I liked about what you just said. I love that you're intuiting these stories and letting them come out. And the part I really like is that if other people don't necessarily vibe on how you do it, you just make your own movies. I'll just make it myself. I don't know. I just think that like, if you try to follow, first of all, there's 100 rules and 8 different people will tell you that they're all different. Yes. Like each book has its own thing. Formula. And each class has its own formula. And each screenwriter has their own process. And I think that if you want to make a cookie cutter script to sell to Michael Bay, like, then yes, follow his formula. Follow the way he does stuff. Like if you want to make an act, like there's certain things, but I'm not trying to make a movie
that sells. Just kidding. I'm not trying to make a movie that is like the same as every other movie. Like, I've seen a couple of movies and I honestly don't want to call them out because I would like to work with some of these people again. But I saw a movie this year that I swear to you they could have taken this other movie from about 10 years ago, opened the script, changed the names, changed some of the locations, and literally beat for beat, and even some of the lines and characters just stayed the same.
Really?
And I was like, I feel like I'm watching that movie again, and with slightly different characters in a slightly different place, but like pretty much the same film. And I could do that. I could take an Oscar award-winning script and like literally just go page by page and be like, okay, here's my character's doing this, just like she's doing here. Here's my character doing this, just like he's doing here. And you can do it like that. But I just don't see the point in making a movie that's already been made, but just changing some of the names.
There are film courses that teach you to do that as an exercise.
Oh yeah, there's even someone sent me a beat sheet,
right?
And it's 120 beats.
Wow!
And it's literally lines of beats. Okay, so it's basically a beat, a page, a couple beats a page, and it was like 1 through 10 should be establishing this character, and it had it broken down. And you could literally sit there and like just fill in each line with different beats and go through it and outline it. Now, maybe that's helpful for some people. To me, it would be really hard to write that way. And that's why I never really liked screenwriting when I was in film school, because I considered myself a writer. I wrote short stories. I wrote poetry. The reason I love poetry is there are no rules. There are just no rules. You could literally write anything in any way, in any form. And unless you're obviously trying to make a haiku or a sonnet, I mean, there are no rules. And screenwriting is all rules.
Yes.
It's literally all rules. And so I decided, who said that there have to be rules? Either the script is good or it's not. And I'm sure there are scripts. I'm sure there are many scripts that don't follow the rules. I mean, look at A Quiet Place, which was a great film. I saw the script, and there is literally an entire page in the script that is blank, except for one line. And it says, like, they walk through the forest quietly.
Wow.
And that's the whole line. And in the movie, it takes like 10 minutes.
Wow.
Because of like whatever. Now, he probably could have added more details or filled out it, but that's how John Krasinski did it. And he's also John Krasinski, and he can do stuff like that and it'll still be made, right? If I did that, they'd be like, this is just wrong. But he did it his way. And like, that was, I don't know, it worked for him. Like Quentin Tarantino's scripts, I'm sure Pulp Fiction was a much different script than anybody had ever really seen. Like when I saw Pulp Fiction, I thought, wow, I didn't know I could tell a story like so out of order.
Right.
Like I'm sure it maybe had been done before that, because I'm not like a film scholar, and maybe it has. But that was for me the moment where I was like, oh my God, I don't have to follow these rules of establishing, setting up a character, blah, blah. I could start right in the middle where there's like guns in the air and they're, whatever. And yeah.
I've had novels do that to me. Okay. Back when I was an aspirant, I've run across novels that were just so different from conventional novels, and they just spoke to me so hard. I'm like, oh man, you can do this? You can write this way? And yeah, because what you say about screenwriting, as they teach it to you, is exactly that. It's rules, 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 inciting incident, plot point 1, yada, 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 and it goes on and on and on. I find that in some ways helpful in developing a story, but in terms of, it's very restrictive. Creatively, I think. But
yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't even know where I'm trying to go with this. What we've done is we've jumped.
I'm agreeing with you.
I know you are, and I'm glad you are. But we're jumping 17 minutes into a conversation that I haven't even really introduced you yet, but that's what I love.
Oh.
Those are the best podcasts for me. So, for those who are trying to catch up on all this weird insider screenwriting lingo, I speak that language just enough to have a conversation about it. You have 2 short films that you've made.
I do.
Jackson Love,
which I wrote and produced and starred in, and Boo, which I wrote, produced, directed, and starred in.
Both are horror films.
Yes.
Did you know?
Well, Jax, I guess, is a little more thriller, but yeah.
All right, but did you know that's what you were setting out to do?
No.
I love it.
No, because things have changed, to be honest, but prior to a couple years ago, I hated horror films.
Really?
Like, I hated them because they scared me. And I don't really enjoy being scared. And I'm scared of everything. So I didn't hate them because they're bad or something. I hated them maybe because they're too good at their job,
right,
which is to scare the hell out of you. And I'm just a big baby. So the idea, if you had told me 4 years ago I'd be making horror movies, I would have laughed in your face and told you that would never, ever, as if you'd told me in 4 years I'd have green, sprouts coming out of my head. I'd be like, okay, that's weird. But anyway, so I wrote Jax I had kind of a friend, that Adam, that kind of was going to make it with me. And it turned out that we didn't end up making it together, but we kind of sort of were discussing the story together. And I was talking about how I wanted this desert and this girl, but I didn't know what she was going to do. And he was like, what if she's, this is a spoiler, but it's been out forever. What if she's a serial killer? And I was like, oh, whoa, that's cool. That would be badass if she was a serial killer. And hey, Rakefet the actor would love to play a serial killer, because who would ever cast me in that? And how unassuming would that be? Because nobody would assume that someone that looked like me or that acted like me would even be a serial killer. And so it's really because of him that it turned into more of a thriller horror thing. And then I just kind of ran with it, and I submitted it to a couple of horror festivals, and they accepted it as a horror.
Amazing.
And then I got just super involved in the horror community because of that. And then I kind of was like, wow, not only do I really love all these people, but horror is actually pretty badass. And also, horror is not all one. I had this idea that horror was one thing, and it's really not. There are just so many different types of horrors. And so then I decided to make Boo as an intentional horror, because the other one was more of an accidental horror. And now I'm I just love the horror community so much, and I love the horror festivals, and I love the horror filmmakers, and I've been able to sit through movies I never thought I'd be able to sit through and not pee my pants.
Yeah.
I'm still scared to death of everything, and when everybody goes home and the lights are out, I remember some of those horror movies, but I'm trying to be a big girl about it.
That's so funny. So tell us a little bit about Boo. That movie it's cleaning up right now. It's winning everything. It's in festivals. You're killing it.
Yeah, it's doing twice as good as Jack so far as festivals played and awards. And it's definitely, I think, a better film in a lot of ways for various reasons. We've won about 36 awards. Amazing. And we've been nominated for about 66 nominations.
Incredible.
And we've played about 50 festivals, I think. We started in June, so I still have a good almost year to go, a little more than half a year, because I'm trying to run through the whole cycle before we distribute. But Boo is a story about a girl who is battling an addiction, and she ends up in a situation where she has to make a really difficult choice, and it kind of leaves her powerless to her addiction, and she makes some bad choices.
Great films are made of bad choices.
Yes. Everyone's like, you should show it at AA meetings. I'm like, yeah, but she kind of makes bad choices. So I don't know how much they would appreciate the film. But yeah.
Where did this story come from? How did it begin?
I had a boyfriend at the time that I was writing it. He called me Boo. I called him Boo. So that kind of came out of that. And then he told me this story one time about how he went to go pick up his friend in the middle of the night, and his friend texted him, like, don't pick me up at the usual place. And he was like freaking out. He's like, meet me down the street. And he got in the car and he was just flipping out, and he couldn't get him to tell him what was wrong. And it turned out that he saw some creepy dude walking around with like garlic around his neck and like doing some weird voodoo. I don't know what this guy was doing. Anyway, it freaked him out. So my boyfriend was like, isn't that a great short? And I was like, well, no, I mean, it's not like there's no real story.
There's a premise.
Like,
there's a premise
here.
There's
a premise, but like, oh, what happened to him and what's wrong with him? But like, there's no story. And so I decided I wanted to make, I don't want to give too much away for people who haven't seen Boo yet.
That's fine.
But, so I wanted to make this horror with this premise of like a boyfriend and his girlfriend getting in the car and she's covered in blood and he's just trying to figure out what happened to her. And then from that, I just kind of was like, well, what happened to her?
Yeah.
And yeah. And that's where that came from.
I
can't say much more. I don't want to give it away. But.
Wait, I'm not gonna do that. I like.
Have you seen it?
No, I've seen the trailers.
Oh, well, then I don't want to ruin it for you.
No.
All right.
But
cool.
I like where stories come from. That interests me.
I wish that I had a better, because they ask that at every film festival. In the Q&A, I think every single one, somebody says, so what's your inspiration for the story? And with Jax, I had an answer because it was like, oh, I'm going to make a movie for me to play a different kind of role, really was the inspiration.
Yeah.
And with Boo, it was more, I heard this weird story and then I just kind of spitballed it around with some friends, and then it didn't, I don't know where it came from. It came from really just, I wanted to talk about addiction because addiction has touched my life and addiction has touched lives around me. Including my boyfriend at the time. His wife had died of a drug overdose before we met.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, well, since he brought me this story, I thought about the addiction component and then kind of went from there.
You stream of conscious, you did that the same way? You wrote it the same way?
Yeah, I actually wrote it really linearly, and then, but the way it's actually in the film, the way the script ended up being was like kind of flashbacks. So it was like all happening in the car with the boyfriend trying to figure out what happened to her. But then I kept flashing back throughout to see what had happened over the course of the night.
Yeah.
And that was actually a suggestion from a writer friend of mine. When he was reading it, he's like, you really should chop this up and go back and forth instead of like doing it all in one. And God bless him, because that really made a big difference in how the story went and how the pace moved and everything.
That can make a story more interesting. Right.
Yeah, because you're not sure. It gave it some suspense.
Yeah, right.
That it was lacking,
right.
And then it made the twist at the end way more powerful, because you were just waiting to find out. Like, well, what is it? Like, what is it? Well, this happened. Right. This happened. This cool. happened. Okay. Well, like, what happened? You know. That's
so cool. So, did you intend to be a filmmaker? Let's go back to the formative years here, because you've been many things: actor, stand-up comic.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Teacher.
Yeah, right. Let's go back to the beginning here. Take me back.
Take you back.
Take me back.
I never thought I would be a filmmaker. Even when I went to film school, I went to film school at Boston University because as I had been an actor most of my life, and I thought, hey, I don't think my parents should pay $40,000 a year for me to go to acting university. So let me learn a little bit about the industry that I plan on working in as an actor and what goes on behind the camera and what goes into making a film. And so I just wanted to learn more about that because I wanted to be an actor. So being an actor from day one has been the dream. I never wanted to be anything else ever. like ever. Not a doctor, not a ballerina, not an astronaut. Like I was like, I want to be an actor. I always wanted to be an actor. And I still really just want to be an actor.
Really?
But yeah, but it's kind of taken a new direction. So I only started making films to further my acting career. And while it actually, in a way, has stalled my acting career because I've been too busy as a filmmaker promoting and traveling and making and writing and whatever, that I actually haven't had time to have an acting career. That was the goal. The goal was for that. And now I'm being looked at as a writer and a director and a producer, which is awesome. And I'm trying to really lean into that, even though it wasn't really my intended goal. And honestly, if somebody was like, you have a lead in a new movie or in a new show, I would drop everything. I would drop the writing. I would drop the directing. I would stop making movies, and I'd be like, great, I'm an actor and I can actually support myself acting, and I would stop doing all of it.
You were acting as a kid, like very, very young?
Not professionally. So my parents didn't want to, even though I grew up in LA and I had a lot of friends in school that were leaving school for auditions and stuff like that. My parents were not fans of me working as a child. So they were like, we'll pay for acting classes. I was in a lot of plays, did a lot of theater, a lot of acting classes and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I graduated college and came back here and began working as a background artist or extra, really, what's the difference? Then that's when I started like professionally working as an actor.
Okay. How does one become an extra in Hollywood? How does that happen?
So easy. It's so easy.
Oh, really?
It's so easy. It actually boggles my mind that people think it's difficult, because it's like, for me, it was harder when I started because it was like 1998 and the internet was there, but it wasn't what it is now. And so there weren't a lot of places to find information out, but I ended up answering some ad in LA Weekly or something, and ended up meeting the right people on one of the sets who helped me like kind of sign up. So if you want to be an extra, there are extras agencies.
Wow.
That most of them don't charge a fee of any kind. Sometimes there's a $20 setup fee. But you basically just go in, and it's not like you have to audition. It's all based on your looks.
Right.
Like, do you look like a high school student? Do you look like what and whatever? And what kind of wardrobe do you have? Do you have formal attire? Do you have Halloween costumes? Do you have bathing suits? Whatever. And you go in and you have them, they take a few pictures of you. You fill out this long questionnaire of like your skills and things you can do. Are you a bike rider? Are you a roller skater? Are you a whatever?
So do people become extras hoping to be discovered, or just trying to make contacts?
I don't know. There are definitely people who are lifers, and like literally they're like, this is a good job. I'm SAG. I get paid 100 and whatever it is a day. I get free food, and they can work almost every single day, and they get their health insurance, and like, they're not trying to be actors. They're just trying to have a job that they don't hate, where they can sit around and eat and play on their computer and whatever all day. Because most of being an extra is just waiting.
That sounds great.
Like, yeah, so there were people like that. And I think that if I didn't want to be an actor, it would actually be a great gig.
Yeah.
But if you want to be an actor, it's a little bit soul-sucking to watch actors actually acting. And you're like, wow, I could do that even better maybe. And here I am being the background blur and the,
Right.
So, but there are some people who do it to get their SAG card. Although now it's much easier to get your SAG card because you can make your own independent film and register it with SAG, and now you've done a SAG job and you're in SAG.
So for the uninitiated, SAG is Screen Actors Guild?
Yes, Screen Actors Guild. That's
the union, basically? It's
a union for the actors. It's SAG-AFTRA, actually, because they merged. It used to be separate. And the idea is they're supposed to help protect you at your jobs and theoretically help get you work. But in reality, what happens is that if you're not a huge name, you end up actually not working enough.
Oh, really?
Because once you're in the union, you cannot work non-union anymore.
Right.
So, and they will kick you out if you do.
I
So
see.
like, for instance, now I've met all these amazing filmmakers, and most of them don't have the means or maybe even the knowledge of how to make it a SAG film. And so if I want to be in their movie, I either have to help them make it SAG, or I can't do it because of SAG, which sucks, because if I want to do it, or the budget's really low, or I don't really care if they make it SAG or not, I can't do it.
Yeah, I see.
Some people still do it, but I think they're crazy, and I'm not taking that kind of a risk.
But the other side, like if, let's say, a Hollywood blockbuster came to cast you as a prominent supporting actress, can you do it if you're not SAG?
So yes, theoretically you could. The thing is that if you're not SAG, you're most likely not getting seen by the cast directors that you would need to get seen by. There are definitely some people that do, but it's really a double-edged sword. It really is, because if you're non-union, you're not maybe getting in for the roles that could actually give you a career.
Right.
And if you are union, you're most likely not getting those roles anyway, and now you can't even do the other stuff.
Yeah, I see.
So there is financial core, which basically means, hey, SAG, I'm not making enough money to live in my career, so I'm going to work non-union, and now I'm not a full member of SAG. It basically kind of makes you a scab-ish kind of a thing. And so technically you're still in SAG, and you still have to pay dues, but you can't be nominated for a SAG award. You can't vote in the elections. And basically, if you ever want to become a full member of SAG, you have to pay your initiation fee again, which now I think is over $3,000.
Egad.
Oh, and you have to beg SAG. You have to like sit in front of a committee and say, "I'm sorry, I just was trying to make money. My daughter was sick, and but I want to be back in SAG." I mean, it's not good.
Sounds like you kind of got to do it. So you went to filmmaking school, you came back and started acting. And then
I did.
The next thing you know, you're on the New Girl show, rolling around with Schmidt.
Fat Schmidt. Of all Schmidts. He was so nice. And he had this fat suit on with all of this prosthetic makeup for his chin and everything. Yeah. And we're making out, and the makeup's getting all over me. And I was like, probably even bigger than I am now. And I didn't want to sit on his lap because I was worried I'm going to crush him. He's like, I can't feel anything in this suit. I have so much padding. You're fine. Don't worry. It was a fun gig, but the whole thing I think lasts like 20 seconds, maybe 15 seconds.
So how does that happen? How do you get that role?
I auditioned for the role. My agent must have submitted me, or I might have submitted myself for an audition. I auditioned. I probably had a callback, but I can't remember. And then they booked me. And then you do it, and then it's over. And I still get some money from residuals for most of the things that I've done.
Oh, really?
It lowers over the years based on how often it's being played and whatever, or how much money the project is making. And it's gotten to a point where I better book something else soon, because that money doesn't, it started good and now it's kind of getting to be like, I'll get 1-cent checks or 25 cents or whatever.
What's it like on that set? Like, do you do a read through, or you just show up the day of the shoot and do it?
So for New Girl, I was not there for the table read. I'm sure they just had someone read my part because it's like 2 lines. But actually that was one of the fastest shoots I have ever had in my life. Because even sometimes when you have 2 lines, you're there all day for some reason. But this one, I mean, they got me in wardrobe and makeup. I went on set. We did the scene. It took an hour maybe. And then I had to get out of, I think the whole thing took 3 hours, which is unheard of. That's actually really not typical for any job I've ever had. So it was just really short. I just got on there. I met the 3 guys because we're in the scene together. And then they let me take some pictures with them afterwards because I was like I was such a fan of New Girl. And so I was just fangirling out.
That's hilarious.
So they took pictures with me outside. And they were really nice to me. And I wanted to meet Zooey Deschanel so bad, but I had met her when I was an extra like years ago on a movie. But I was an extra, so she didn't, Right. Anyway, I didn't get to like re-meet her, which sucked. But other than that, it was a fun job.
That's so great. And then you were in the Superbad movie.
Yes, that's a different thing. So Superbad was like my second credit, maybe. I think I had done an episode of My Name Is Earl, and I had like no other credits, but I was with a really good agency. And so they got me in for this part. It was actually, I went in for the part of the cashier who is crying when McLovin gets punched in the liquor store.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the part I went in for, was for her. And so actually at the audition, because I went straight to callbacks because I had a good agent. So I didn't have to do like a pre-read for the casting actor. I went straight to like producers. And Seth Rogen was at the audition and improvising that he was the cop and he was asking me questions about what had happened. And they just wanted to see if I could act on my feet and improvise and be funny and actually hold my own with Seth because the scene would be with him and whatever. Which was, that was the scariest thing.
Oh, I was going to ask you, is that nerve-wracking? Holy cow.
Yes, especially because I didn't know he was going to be there. And I walked in and he's just like, hey, and I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. And I'm like, well, now I have to be funny. And like, so he ended up, I guess he liked me, but I didn't end up getting the part. And I remember they called me and they said they went with someone who was older. And also just completely different than me. I mean, she's African American for one.
Right.
So for whatever reason, they went that direction, like a different person. But they were like, we really liked you, and so we're going to put you at one of the parties. And technically, you don't have a role or a line, but we're going to like throw you something to say when you're there. And I was like, whatever you want to do. Like, if I didn't get the part, then you want to still put me in the movie somehow, then great. Sure.
That's pretty cool.
Which was so, and it was a week-long shoot. So I got paid for a whole week, but I got like really bad money now that at the time it was amazing. I was like, wow. But like now when I think about it, I'm like, wow, they really just gave me almost nothing. But that movie also was made not low budget, but for a studio film, it was pretty low budget. And I had a great time, and I ended up making really good friends with Lauren, who Miller at the time, who ended up marrying Seth Rogen and is his wife now. And so we were in the scene together, so we ended up becoming friends. And so it was a really great networking opportunity for me, and also a friend that I have forever, I hope.
And now you hang out with Seth Rogen all the time? Is that how it goes?
The first couple of years, there was a lot of hanging out with Seth Rogen. There was Halloween parties, New Year's parties. I went to his house one time and smoked with him and Lauren and watched Saturday Night Live, I think. Which actually was one of the most surreal experiences ever. And he's so nice, and she's so nice. And she's also a writer-director in her own right now, an actor. And they're just very talented, very nice, very successful people.
This is so fun.
They watched Jax and gave me notes, actually, which was really nice of them. They did. They were like, cut the first 10 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. And I ended up cutting about 5, but I didn't fully listen to their notes, to be honest. And maybe I should have.
You should be careful what you say right now, because I know Seth Rogen is a big listener of this podcast.
Is he?
I'm pretty sure.
I'm it's very possible.
He listens to all the Canadian things.
He loves Canada.
As he should.
He's very proud of Canada, and as I am even, and I'm not even Canadian. I really like Canada.
On behalf of the country, I appreciate that. But you are funny. You are a stand-up comic. I've seen you on the YouTube.
Oh gosh.
You haven't done comedy in a while though, have you?
It's been like 7 years.
You were good.
7 years.
You were good at it.
Thanks. I I was good at it. It's a lot of it's a lot of work, and it wasn't something that I only started doing stand up to further my acting career.
Okay.
Everything has been to further my acting career. There's a theme.
I know about this. I know about this.
I did that, and then and I'm sure it did help, but after a while it was like, if you don't want to be a stand up, it's too much work.
Yeah.
Going to clubs every night, waiting until 1 a.m. till you get to go up and do your 3 minutes or your 5 minutes, having bringer shows where you got to bring audience to even get up there, writing new material all the time. I did the same set for like 4 years. Like nobody knew because I didn't have like a following. So it was always different people. But like other comics knew because like I would be performing with them and they're like, wow, you're still doing those jokes. I'm like, well, they worked.
They still kill, man.
I just knew they worked and I didn't want to have to write something else that I would have to hone and get better at. And like I said, if things are too hard, I tend to shut down. So if it doesn't come very easy to me, I just think, oh, well, it's not for me. And then, because there are things that do come easy to me. So
making horror
why
films.
waste my time on the things? Yeah, but that's not easy.
It's working for you, though. It floats for you.
Yes, it works. It definitely works.
So several episodes back, you're my second brush with Hollywood on this podcast. Several episodes back, I had a conversation with an actor called Tyler Olson. Okay. And Tyler's in LA, and he's been in a bunch of Bruce Willis movies, and he was just filming with Mel Gibson and another thing. So he's doing it. He's been down there 20 years, and it's finally happening for him, right?
Good.
He started off doing stand-up, too. And he did it.
Oh, yeah.
He did it because he wanted some evidence that he could be funny to get comedic roles. I mean, smart. Is that what you were doing?
It was like I was already getting comedic roles, but I wasn't getting the roles that I want. I wasn't getting like the size of roles that I wanted. So if you can build a name for yourself in the stand-up community,
right,
and if you have a reel of stand-up, then it's a lot easier. Like even in the breakdown, sometimes you'll see like we're looking for stand-ups, we're looking for improvisers, we're looking for people who are good on their feet. And so I figured, well, I'm booking comedy things. If I want to like get better comedy things, then let me show them that I can be funny.
Yeah.
But then I didn't want to be funny only. So then I started making horror movies.
There are funny horror movies.
Extreme.
I mean, if you look at something like Zombieland, there are lots of funny horror movies, right?
Well, horror comedy is one of my favorite things. And I didn't realize that was even a thing until I got into this horror world, and I would love to write a horror comedy one day. Both Jax and Boo definitely have some comedic elements, but it's almost like not on purpose. Like I almost can't help it sometimes in the way I perform something or in the way I write something. I don't mean for it to be funny.
It's you though.
But it's just, I can't help it. I can't help it. It's just, comedy's in my blood. So even when I'm trying to be serious, sometimes it just comes out not.
Well, with your writing style, it's going to have your flavors all over it, especially if you're not pre-planning anything and you're just letting it come through you. It's going to have your flavors, and that's funny. So that's okay.
Well, and that's what I've won an award for Boo for Best Dialogue, which was a really cool award to win because dialogue is very hard to write.
Sure it is.
And to make it realistic and natural. And I think the reason, and I've always gotten compliments on my dialogue, and I really think it's because of how I write. Mm-hmm. Because I write the way I think.
It's
and
conversational.
I think the way I speak.
Yeah.
And so I never write characters I don't know. I could write, like, if I tried to write like a military script, I don't think it would come out sounding natural at all because I don't know those people. Yeah. I don't know those characters. I just write characters based on people I know, based on me, based on my family, based on my friends. And then it's really easy to write the dialogue because you know how they're going to sound. And as an actor, I'll always read my scripts out loud. And the minute you read it out loud, you can hear this sounds really weird. Like nobody talks like that.
100%.
Or nobody says things like this.
Yep. I did the same thing when I was writing books. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, let's read this out. That sounds,
Yeah.
nobody would ever say that. That's dumb.
Yeah.
Fix that,
And
you know?
you know how many table reads I've been in or sets I've been on where I'm like reading it and I like turn to them and I'm like, nobody talks like this.
Yeah.
Like, can I say it this way? Because this it's just not right. It just doesn't, I don't even know why sometimes it just doesn't sound right.
Oh yeah, totally. 100%. It's really weird. Dialogue is funny that way because I've read lots of books and I've seen lots of movies where the dialogue it's jarring. Like it takes you right out of the story. You're like, what?
And a great script can become very, very bad if the dialogue is bad.
Or if it's not presented, like if the actors aren't speaking it, you know what I mean?
Well, for me, bad acting is the number one thing that will ruin a movie because you can have bad sound, bad cinematography, bad script, but if you have good acting, you almost could pull it off.
Right.
But it works the opposite way also.
Yeah. So speaking of Tyler Olson from the Bruce Willis movies, he said something to me, and I think I heard you say something similar. Or we talked about, because he's been in Hollywood for 20 years, doing the thing, working as a waitress or waiter rather, and like doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, I never wanted to be famous. I'm not here to be famous. I'm here to work.
Sure.
And that jumped out at me from that interview, and it's jumped out at me from a lot of other creative people that I've had on this program. It's like they just want to do the thing. Well,
yeah, I think look, I'm an acting coach also, so I meet a lot of new actors. And the ones that tell me when I ask them why they want to do it, and there are ones that will say, I'm doing it because I want to be famous. And they're usually the worst actors.
Of course.
Because they're doing it as a means to an end that actually, I've never been famous, but I can imagine, I've been places where I'm popular in small groups.
Me too.
And that's enough for me to know that I'm pretty sure being famous kind of sucks.
I've heard that.
Like, I honestly don't see it as something that I would want. And I agree with Tyler because I've always wanted to be an actor who can act and not have to have a day job. And I can just pay my bills doing what I love, which is acting. Yeah. And honestly, being famous would actually ruin it because then I can't go to the market. Then I can't do what I need to do. Then I'm being followed around. Then it's all about publicists and you have to be careful what you say and people are looking at you and staring at you. And it's actually very uncomfortable when people recognize me for one reason or another because it's just like, they don't realize they're being creepy, but it's creepy. It's creepy. And I know I've done it. I've done it to people. I know that it's like a natural reaction because you're like, you feel like you know this person.
Right.
And you don't, but you feel like you do.
Yeah.
So, which is probably the way I stared at Seth Rogen in that audition. Just like, I know you.
Well, the thing is, somebody like Tyler, somebody like you, if you're not in it for the right reason, you probably won't be as committed to the craft as you need to be. When he was slogging it out and continues to, he's taking acting classes every night. Like he's committed to developing himself as an actor, right? The way I'm committed to developing myself as a drummer or whatever. It's like if you're in it for the wrong reason, you just won't dedicate yourself to it.
Well, you won't be, and that's why you won't be as good at it.
Right.
And it probably won't happen for you because you can't be like, honestly, there are easier ways to become famous than being an actor. I can think of many.
Instagram.
There's Instagram. Well, now there's a lot,
Yeah.
There's even ways to be infamous, right? There's
Indeed.
There's all sorts of ways to be famous or infamous, but like, I actually, the only thing I can think of that would be a benefit, two things that I can think of that would be a benefit to being famous. And one is you probably aren't having to audition anymore and people are just offering you roles left and right, which is probably super cool. And you get to have your pick of projects. And two, if you do have an issue or a cause that is important to you, people might actually listen and you might actually have a greater impact than you would if you weren't famous. But you can also, if the cause thing is important, then be a politician. then go run for office
Right.
and be that kind of famous. And honestly, if you're a working actor that's working all the time, the people who are offering people roles will know about you whether you're famous or not.
Right.
Because they will. But the thing is that like now as a producer, you have to think, well, is this person's name going to guarantee my investors they're going to get their money back? And I'm not that name right now.
Right.
So it would be nice if I was famous enough to be a name that investors would feel comfortable giving me millions of dollars to make what I want to make, and that they were going to make their money back. And that's the only benefit I can see to becoming famous, really.
That makes a certain amount of sense. All that makes sense. I mean, the reality is you're on a trajectory here. You've made 2 short films and they've been enormously successful. Like, you're just at the beginning. You know, like you've been around for a long time, but as a filmmaker, I mean,
as a filmmaker, I've just started.
Right? You're brand new, man.
Yeah.
So it's like that will probably come if you keep developing as you are, if you want to. I mean, I know you want to. You're dying to be an actor, so okay.
Yeah, my problem is I'm having a really hard time changing my self-identity.
I bet.
Because, like, my identity is I'm an actor. Like,
Right.
and it always has been. Even as a kid, even before I worked professionally, I was like, I'm an actor. That's what I am. That's what I do. And so to now, like, I won a couple Best Director awards, and I had a real imposter syndrome
I bet.
after I won them. Because I'm like, who are these people? Why are they calling me a director? And it's like, well, you directed something. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, I had help and I had a crew and I had a consulting. And everyone's like, well, yeah, every director has help. That's the whole point of the crew. And that's the whole point of everybody's, you know, around you. But I really had a hard time even kind of owning and calling myself a director, much less the best director. Because it's just like, what do I know about directing? Like, honestly, I approached directing the same way I approached writing. Like, well, I'll just figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, as they go. And I brought in people, including my editor, Ned Thorne, who came on as like a consulting director because he had directed some shorts before. And I just surrounded myself with people who know more than me and learned from them.
I love that you did this, though. This is another running theme of the creatives that I have on my show, is that they just do it. Whether they know what they're doing or not, if they have an idea and there's, you know, some mojo behind it, they do it.
Yeah.
Other people don't do it. Right?
Well, and I think that's just the difference between successful people and not successful people. I don't think successful people are smarter. They do it. They're just willing to do it.
Yeah.
And it's true, and it's hard to get yourself. Believe me, making Jax was really hard because I mean, Boo was hard, but Jax was like, I literally felt like I was reinventing the wheel because I just had no clue, no clue whatsoever. And I met a filmmaker who once said that she literally Googled every single step of the way.
Amazing.
Like from beginning to end, she just Googled, how do I do this? 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 And I mean, it must have been exhausting to go through that process, but she did it because she wanted to make it happen. And I think that anything you do, especially creatively, you have to just want it more than anything. And I tell actors that I coach, like, if you don't want this more than anything, don't even do it. Just don't, because you won't do what it takes to get to where you want to be. It has to be the thing that you want more than anything. And I mean, it to some degree, like, you know, I wanted a family and kids, and I'm 40, and who knows if that's even going to happen. But I wanted this career more than anything, and that's what I put all my eggs into, pun intended,
so
into
speak,
that
yeah.
basket.
Yeah.
So I may have lost out on other things. Who knows? Maybe I still have a chance. Who knows? But like, there was just nothing was going to stop me from this. Like, I wouldn't leave town so that I wouldn't miss auditions. Like, I wouldn't go on vacation. Like, I spent every penny on headshots and acting classes. And look, I made 2 movies literally just for my acting career. And it takes so much work and so much money and so much time. And it was all just because I'm just trying to get to this place of I have what I want.
That's so great. That's what it takes.
Yeah, well, I wish I could do that with some other things in my life, but apparently I don't want those things as badly.
It's just not time. That's all. It's just time
I
frame.
will, right? At some point.
It's just time frame. What's been the hardest thing?
Hold on one second. I'm just taking my sweatshirt off. The hardest thing in terms of what?
Hardest thing in terms of getting here. What drives you crazy?
Well, the hardest thing, and I think probably most filmmakers would say this, is the money problem.
Yeah.
And I'm sure musicians as well. Because to do what you want to do, you need money.
Yeah.
And so that alone is it's very difficult, and it's a problem. I did crowdfunding for both of my projects, but that is in itself a production that took months and literally hours of my time and weeks and months and every time. So I don't know. I guess money would be the biggest problem. I would have maybe a couple years ago said, well, the fact that you don't really have control over your career as an actor. But I said, can I curse on here?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well,
I insist.
Okay, good. Well, I said, fuck that.
Good.
I'm going to make my own shit then. You don't want to cast me in the roles that I think that I can play because you put me in this box as a stand-up or as a whatever, then fuck that.
I love it.
I'll write my own shit. Am I a writer? No. Am I a filmmaker? No.
Yes, you are.
Well, now I am.
Right?
So I think that in a way, being a director or a writer is a lot easier to feel like you have control over your career because you can of course, they're also waiting for the right jobs and whatever, but you can actually actively, if you want to, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
Maybe not on the scale you want, maybe not the way you want, but you could make it happen. As an actor, it's a lot harder to feel any kind of control over your career because you're at the mercy of other people's decisions,
right, and
other people's choices.
I feel that's super hard because I'm what's called in the music business a side player, okay? So I get hired by people to play their shows.
Right.
And so I depend on people to hire me to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
But I can do it too the way you're doing it. I can start my own thing and go out and do it. So, I mean, the option is there, but I do feel it.
Tour for yourself. Like,
yeah.
Okay, this is my set. This is what I'm doing. And I'm going to contact these 10 cities and I'm going to find a place to perform in them. Yeah. And it's going to cost money and it's going to take time and it's going to be work. But in the end, you could do it all on your own. I have friends who are musicians who go on tour. Yeah. Well, Ken does.
Well, I tour with them. So it's like.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to just tour with them, obviously, than to start over. But if you wanted to have the control. Yes. It's possible.
There are ways to do it. That's the thing. It's like it'd be very easy for you as an actor to just sit there and wait for the phone to ring. It would be very easy for me as a drummer to sit here and wait for the phone to ring. And especially these days, this world is very small. Like there are more opportunities for people to do things now than there probably have ever been. But
that's because there are people who are doing their own shit.
Yes.
And they're hiring more people.
And there are venues for people's stuff to be like, there are places you can put your movie. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There are places I can put music.
Sure.
So people need to get into this DIY kind of mindset. Like, if it's not happening, you can do things to make it happen.
That's what people, before I made Jax, people kept telling me that. They're like, why don't you create your own content? Put some stuff on YouTube, film some videos, blah, blah, blah. And I kept going, I don't want to create my own content. I don't want to do all that work. I just want to, but it's hard to sit and wait for the phone to ring because sometimes the phone doesn't ring. So it's a lot less time consuming to just make it happen than to just sit and wait and you don't get anything out of it. Like, I don't know if my career had been and my acting career had been as stalled as it is right now for the last 2 or 3 years, and I didn't have Jax or Boo,
right?
I would be really down on myself right now.
Right.
Like really like wondering if I wasted my life and whatever.
Yeah.
And now at least I feel like I've accomplished something.
Right.
Something has happened.
That's the thing. It's like, I've said this to people before, you know, the next year is going to go by.
Yeah. Whether you do something or not.
Right. So you might as well do something. I started a podcast, for example. You know what I mean?
Which is awesome and hard in and of itself.
Well, I had to Google every step of the way, like we just said.
I'm sure.
Right? But you do it. You just you do it.
Just do it.
And then I find myself talking to you, which is fabulous, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Kid Factor real quick?
Oh, sure. That's just, I started that company in 2010. I used to hold actual acting classes for kids, but I don't have the studio or the time anymore. But I do mostly coaching now. And I did it specifically with kids because when I was a kid, we got scammed a lot by people promising my parents things that they shouldn't have been promising them, asking them for money they shouldn't have been asking for. And so I was like, I really want to help by giving back to kids now and parents now and make sure they don't fall into those traps, because there are so many people out there willing to capitalize on your desperation and wanting something really badly.
In LA, I can only imagine.
Oh, yeah. And I still even fall for some, like with film festivals that are not legit and,
right.
You know, but you just have to do your research. And now, thank God, with the internet, it's a lot easier to kind of look. I mean, when I was a kid, there was no one to ask. You know, it was like, oh, if I give you $1,500, then great.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, no.
Right. Then the phone number's out of service.
I went back one time. We paid all this money for this thing, and we went back because we had to pick something up, and when we went back to the office, the whole office was gone. The computers were gone. The desks were gone.
Wow.
The entire place was gone.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Well, good for you for starting that, man, because kids need advocates.
Yes, indeed.
So, what's next for you? You're writing a feature. What else is going on?
I'm writing a feature in whatever structure it ends up in. And what else? A filmmaker I met asked me to do kind of like a supporting role in his feature that they're still trying to get the funding, but as soon as that's up and running, I'll have at least a little part in it. And I just keep telling everyone at all the festivals, like, just put me in your movies and I'll stop making them. Because if I was busy enough acting, I wouldn't have time to make them, and that would be just fine for me.
I feel like,
but if
go ahead. Good. I feel like Seth Rogen should just hook you up.
You know, I feel like he should too. And Seth, if you're listening, call me.
I'm sure he listens to every episode
of every Canadian podcast.
I think of every podcast in the world.
You think? That's very possible.
He's that kind of guy.
He's not busy. No, I mean, I know so many people in this industry from like on every level, big, small, whatever. And it's just a matter of planting seeds. Yeah. And then they grow when they're ready to. Like, look, if I'm ever in a room again with Seth Rogen auditioning for him somehow, I mean, he knows me. So like, that's going to make a difference, right?
Absolutely.
I just have to get back in that room.
And, you know, if you're talking to him and he wants to be on my show, tell him to give me a quick message. I can probably make that happen.
Sure. I'm sure you can work that out. I don't talk to him. Even his wife is hard to get a hold of nowadays because they're just busy. They raise money for Alzheimer's all year long, and they're doing their own projects and stuff. But yeah, if I can even get them to see Boo, it would be amazing.
That would be helpful.
Yes.
Enough Seth Rogen, and enough. I've taken enough of your time. I so appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. As you can see, I like to talk a lot, so
that's great. You know how useful that is for a podcast host?
You know it. Probably. I'm always like, they're probably like, why did I bring her on? She doesn't stop talking.
That's perfect. If I don't have to say anything, it's a great episode.
Okay, good.
You know what I mean?
Good.
So thank you again, and good luck with all the stuff. And when you win an Oscar, I expect you to come back on the program.
Sure.
Or even before that.
Sure, no problem. Anytime.
My Skype is always open to you.
Okay.
And thanks again.
Well, thank you. Say hi to Ken and Sarah.
I will
love
do that.
them, and I miss them dearly.
We're coming down to Texas in January.
Is that as close as you're getting?
So far, as far as I know, yes.
Tell her she needs to get her butt to California.
Well, if you can book us some shows, we will certainly be there. If you need a
That's
band,
what I need.
If you need a band to be in the background of a bar scene or something, we're your band.
Hey, I tried to get Sarah a song from Sarah for Boo, but none of the songs she had were like right, and we ended up going a completely different way anyway. But
really?
I'm always thinking about Sarah.
Oh, she just dropped a new record, or she's about to. So we can talk off screen about that. But
maybe in the future I'll throw in a bar scene with a band, and we'll see how that goes.
Dude, I'm very good on camera.
Okay, good.
Nobody even knows I'm the drummer. Nobody even knows I'm there.
The drummer is the coolest one.
He is, but you can never see him. It's the chief.
That's true.
It's the chief complaint of drummers that whenever the photos from the show come back, can't see us. We're always behind the singer. We're always whatever. You know what I mean?
It's so true. Lead singer's the way to go.
I know. I think that's the next step for me, probably.
There you go.
Yeah. So then, if you need to cast somebody as a lead singer in your feature, I'm your guy.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with everything.
You too.
And I hope to talk to you again.
For sure.
Okay.
Talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you once again, gentle listener, for taking in today's show. And thank you to Rakefet for being such an inspiring guest. If you want to know more about Rakefet and the rest of my guests, go to www.john-huff.com. That's JOHN-HUFF.com. You can also find the show on Facebook at The John Huff Podcast. If you're an Instagram person, you can find me at JW_Huff. If you're an Apple Podcasts person, please do me a big favor and leave a rating and review of the show, preferably a positive one. That's all the time we have for now, but I'll be back very soon. Until then, keep your wits about you, and remember, good things happen when you put yourself out there. Bye for now. Man, it is nice to be back in my little studio.